Hi, everyone. My name is David Zakariaie. I'm the CEO and founder of Senseye. And at Senseye, our goal is to solve the mental health crisis. And as large and complicated and personal of an issue as the mental health crisis has become, we actually think the underlying reason behind it and the foundational step to solve it is relatively straightforward. The biggest problem in the mental health industry is that the way we diagnose and treat and manage patients today is basically the equivalent of diagnosing someone with type 2 diabetes, but never measuring their blood sugar. It seems like such a ridiculous concept, but that is the standard of care in mental health right now. There is a very accurate and objective way to diagnose patients. The problem is it requires a very highly skilled psychologist or psychiatrist and about 4 to 5 hours of a patient's time. And so in the real world, that process doesn't actually occur. About 70% of all mental health is diagnosed and treated exclusively in primary care. And it's essentially the equivalent of you show up at your doctor's office, or you log on to a telehealth session, you answer a couple of questions, they call it depression, they call it anxiety, you're prescribed with an SSRI or a Xanax, and it's the end of the day. And in the last surveillance study that the NIH did, they showed that the best diagnosed mental health condition in the United States is major depressive disorder, and it's misdiagnosed 65% of the time, and that's the best condition. As you get to more complicated conditions like PTSD or bipolar, that misdiagnosis rate skyrockets between 80 and 90%. And that's not the clinician's fault, it's certainly not the patient's fault. It's just the reality of a system built purely on patient self-reporting. And so that's really the problem that we're trying to solve. And so at its core, Senseye is the first platform for the diagnosis and severity tracking of specific mental health indications, starting with PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, and major depressive disorder. The way the product works, it's an app on a mobile phone. We've gone to mobile phone to solve distribution, but it is regulated. It's a Class 2 de novo medical device. The first time a patient interacts with it, it's about a 10-minute test. We show ocular stimuli on the screen of the phone as we videotape your eye's response to it. And then on the other side of that, we spit out a binary diagnosis as well as a severity score. There's then a shorter, about 3 to 4 minute version of a test that a patient is able to take as often as their clinician wants them to, as a way to see how that severity is changing over time in response to treatment. On the neuroscience side, we've known that this has been possible for a very long time. The problem has been to measure a lot of the more novel ocular metrics. You traditionally need a series of traditional eye trackers that would cost anywhere between $70,000 and $80,000 each. And so our breakthrough is less on the neuroscience side, and it's more that we've built the computer vision to be able to do with the front-facing camera of a cell phone what you normally need hundreds of thousands of dollars of very expensive equipment for. And there's really 3 things that we're measuring in response to the stimuli. The first is all the normal conventional ocular metrics you would think about, so things like pupil size, gaze, blinks, saccades. The second is more novel ocular metrics. We're able to differentiate between changes in the sphincter and dilator muscle fibers of the iris as a way to understand if the stimuli is activating your sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system. And then the third is a heart rate variability off the face. And all those three, all 3 of those things combined in response to the stimuli is what is allowing this to work. Right now, we're deep in clinical trial land. We conducted our first clinical trial. It was a pilot stage trial last December. It was very successful, but it was small. It was about 68 patients, and we ran it at UCLA. We're now in the middle of a larger 750-patient trial. We're about a third of the way through it. It's across 9 sites. On the academic side, Harvard, Mass General is the primary site, and there's 5 other universities as well as a couple of private sites as well. Our accuracy right now is slightly north of 0.8 on both sensitivity and specificity, but we feel, based on what we see in the data, that by the time we train the model on the complete data set, we can probably get the accuracy somewhere around 0.91, 0.92. The reality of mental health is the human condition is a little bit too messy to ever have a diagnostic that's 100% accurate. But when the standard of care right now is somewhere between 20 and 30% accuracy, we think it's a pretty large jump. Yeah, and so this is kind of what this is essentially what our pipeline looks like right now. The first indication, which is PTSD, is Class 2 de novo. We're targeting submitting it to FDA early next year. And then the agreement we have with our review team at the FDA is that the comorbid indications, which are control groups on the PTSD trial, which are anxiety and depression, can be 510K'd on top of it as soon as PTSD is approved. Our go-to-market strategy is a little bit unique in that what we've built is, what we've built is 100% software. And so rather than do a traditional door-to-door medical device sale, our thought process has been to find the aggregators of mental health patients and turn those into our customers instead. And right now, the largest aggregator of mental health patients is a lot of the large telehealth platforms. About 80% of mental health is diagnosed and treated on telehealth right now, and that could be your local doctor using Zoom or a lot of specialty platforms such as Talkspace or BetterHelp. And so our go-to-market strategy is we essentially sell enterprise SaaS to the large telehealth platforms banded on volume. It becomes a standard way that they diagnose and track the severity of their patients. And then from a unit economics level, it works out to about $350 per patient per year. About half of that we expect to be captured by Senseye, and the other half to be split between the telehealth platform and the individual provider. There are existing insurance reimbursement codes that we're able to use. The larger problem is most of mental health right now is cash pay. So it will take time to kind of transform mental health from the fee-for-service model is right now, which is primarily cash pay, to a value-based system. But there are existing codes that we are able to use. It pays about $100 for the upfront diagnostic and then $25 a month for the remote patient monitoring after that. And although we are pre-FDA, we have started to generate some revenue right now. We did about $2.2 million in revenue last year, and we're on track to do just under $4 million this year. Our revenue right now comes from two places. The first, we have a series of customers. In the Department of Defense in the U.S. Who have started to deploy it as who have started to deploy it in pilots by getting a waiver from the FDA to start testing it pre-FDA approval. And then we have a couple of pharmaceutical partners who are using it as an exploratory or secondary endpoint on their own clinical trials so that they have a more objective way of showing the FDA that their drugs actually work. We have a great team. We're a team of 23, primarily based in Austin, Texas, and we've been able to get four of the leading KOLs in the space to engage with us as well. We've filed 9 patents. 6 have been granted, and the other 3 are still pending. And we're currently raising a $10 million Series A. We signed a term sheet a couple weeks ago, and we have about $7.5 million of the 10. And so we're looking to kind of close out the last part of that round. But yeah, I'm David from Senseye, and thanks for listening. Thank you.